Okay, here we go. So, this is a horoscope for an Aries rising ascendant today. And this is another very useful technique for getting good at Jyotish if you don't have a regular teacher, which is to mull over house rulerships in each of the rising signs and mull over placements of planets in different combinations in that horoscope. But even before you get to the planets, there are certain kinds of dynamics built into each of the rising signs because the same planets will always rule the same houses for that particular rising sign. And when one planet rules two houses, it ties together the themes of those two houses for all people with that rising sign. And since there's only 12, you then have another base layer of Jyotish that is just kind of like assumed background knowledge. So starting with Aries, which is the first rising sign, some of this information is contained in features of the rising sign itself. So for instance, in the Northern Hemisphere, Aries is a short rising sign. Rising signs can vary from just about an hour, a little less than an hour, to over 2 hours. And so they're called signs of short ascension. So a sign of short ascension, guess what, inclines people who have that rising sign to be short in stature, particularly if the planet also suggests shortness. The other thing about Aries rising is that it is what is termed a backwards rising sign. So the constellation comes over the horizon feet first. And backward rising signs are implicated in things going backwards or things going differently or awry from how they go for other people, particularly because this attains to the birth moment. Backward rising signs are one factor to look at in terms of determining birth trauma, which can have a big effect on the personality. Obviously, it's a movable sign, it's a fire sign, it's the first sign, it's ruled by a hot, fiery planet. So it has a kind of double fire quality to it, as does Leo, which is ruled by the sun, another hot, fiery planet. Opposed to Sagittarius, which is a fire sign, but is ruled by a Kapha planet. That governs the element of space. So all these things, compound to make Aries a very fiery place in the zodiac, and to make it contrarian because it's a backward rising sign and it is ruled over by Mars, who one of Mars's names in Sanskrit is Vakri, the crooked, because Mars has a very difficult to predict retrogression cycle. And so Mars, it seems to have a mind of his own. And because he's the governor of Icha Shakti, personal will, strong Mars in someone's horoscope always gives them a strong personal will. Mars is also a tamasic planet, so Martian people are very stubborn, sometimes to their detriment. So all of this is sort of background information. Now, the other thing about Aries rising is that in addition to ruling the first house, Mars rules the 8th house of death and scandal and everything bad and long-lasting that can happen to people, chronic disease, bankruptcy, imprisonment, terminal illness, deep trauma, sexual trauma, etc., etc. The 8th house does also rule sacred oral traditions, sacred lore, tantra, the occult, the deep mysteries of life. Those are some of its positive meanings. But one of the things the 8th house rules is scandal, and so we could say that Aries people have a kind of innate tendency to do something contrary to the social order and have scandal come out as a result. Just off the top of my head, both John F. Kennedy Jr. and Martin Luther King were Aries rising people, and they were both assassinated, of course. That does not mean that even the majority of Aries people are assassinated, but one will find that scandal often plays out in their life as a major theme at some point in time. Another factor is that Mercury, who is an enemy to Lugna Lord Mars, rules the 3rd and 6th house. Both the 3rd and 6th house are Dustanas, the 3rd being a mild Dustana, and both govern combat or conflict. And so there can often be for Aries people conflict, and conflict and siblings can arise together. That, depending on how the planets are placed, that can mean conflict with siblings, or it can mean being with siblings during conflict. It depends. But but there is a theme developing there around a kind of natural maleficence of Mercury wherever he sits in the horoscope for an Aries rising person. Another thing is that Jupiter, who is a friend to the Lugna Lord, rules both the ninth house and the 12th house. So both of those houses can rule having to do with foreigners. They can both rule something having to do with spirituality, and Jupiter is the natural significator of spirituality, but that may come with losses for Aries rising people because of the rulership of the 12th house. Losses and or isolation may be tied to the theme of spirituality in their lives. So through doing this kind of just very general background sort of study, you then have a feel for the universe of each of the 12 rising signs. Doing what I was talking about in the last video in terms of looking at planetary strength, and this is not, I mean, probably people are born every second, right? So someone was born with this horoscope today, but I don't know them. But you can go around here and do an assessment of planetary strength. So if we start with the sun is in an enemy sign. It's also it's what is termed Nicha Balashi. It is just about to become debilitated in a couple of days. It is not influenced by its dispositor. It is not aspected by a benefic. It is with two malefics. So it is influenced by Mars because Mars is with the sun, and that whole combination is aspected by Saturn. So we would say that this person has a weakish sun. Now, and I'm jumping ahead, but this also forms a powerful yoga for an Aries rising person. Mars and Sun are mutual friends, and anytime you have a planetary yoga, it's better if the members of that yoga are planets that cooperate easily together. If they cooperate easily together, the fruits of the yoga will come more easily into the person's life. If the planets in the yoga don't cooperate together, then there will be a lot of tension and frustration. You'll still get the result of the yoga, but it will be more challenging. So there is another yoga formed here too, the 1st and 10th Lord, and Adana Yoga, the 1st and 11th Lord, because Mars and Saturn mutually aspect, but that is going to be a yoga of tension and frustration. So, you know, the sun he makes yoga, so that doesn't make a planet stronger. The yoga makes the factors of the horoscope give a bigger result, but if the planets involved in a yoga are weak, the result will not be anywhere near as stellar as if the planets involved in the yoga are strong. So this is a yoga between the 1st and 5th lords. Now it's placed in the 6th house, which is an Upachaya house. So this is going to be a yoga where things will tend to start off more difficultly, and then improve with the person's effort. But back to planetary strength. So the sun is okay-ish. Then we go to the moon. The moon is here in the ascendant. Now, having the moon in the ascendant is not always so great, because that is one of the places the moon can sit that can be the beginning of the formation of a Balarishta yoga. So because the moon is an unstable planet, it doesn't always destabilize people, but it does give more fluctuation to the life, the mind, the emotions. Usually fluctuation comes into the life in a physical sense because the person has fluctuating emotions, which they use as a basis for making decisions. But at any rate, this moon here in the ascendant, it's in the sign of a friend. It's aspected by its dispositor Mars. It's aspected by two natural benefics, Venus and Mercury, and it's almost full because we had the full moon yesterday. So it's a very bright, strong moon. Now right away, if you know any Jyotish, the Venus is sitting opposite that moon. We can guess that this person will have a love of beauty, art, feminine things, women generally, that they will love high fashion, beautiful clothing, etc., because both Venus and moon rule things like that. Many, many famous performers, especially ones who dress for the job, like Cher, have Venus and moon in angles. That's I don't know that it's technically a yoga, but it's yoga. Like Venus and Moon in mutual contact is a yoga for wealth as well. So once you're doing this process, it all kinds of synthesizes together much more rapidly. But in the beginning, it's good to go plodding step by step. So to be continued.